The Tenant Who Knew Too Much, Chapter 1. The apartment on Maple Street in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina, nestled between rows of historic brownstones and modern lofts, stood an aging apartment complex on Maple Street. It wasn't the fanciest place in town, but it was home to a diverse mix of residents, young professionals, retirees, and families trying to make ends meet. Most of the tenants kept to themselves, except for Henry Waker. The landlord, Henry, was a man stuck in the past, a white man in his late 60s. He had inherited the building from his father, who had owned it since the segregation era. Although the laws had changed, Henry's mindset hadn't. He had a reputation for being selective about who he rented to, often overcharging black tenants, delaying repairs for their units, and finding any excuse to evict them. So when Dr. Maya Henderson, a striking black woman in her late 30s, with piercing brown eyes and an air of quiet authority, moved into Unit 3B, Henry took immediate notice she was different from his usual tenants. Too confident, too self-assured. And Henry didn't like that chapter 2. The harassment began from the moment Maya moved in. Henry made it clear he didn't want her there. It started with small inconveniences, the maintenance team mysteriously forgetting to fix her plumbing, her heating breaking down in the middle of winter, and her mailbox always being stuffed with misplaced eviction notices. Then the threats came. One evening, as Maya returned from work, she found a notice taped to her door. YUYUNDEEDEONGHERELEVEOULREGRETT. Maya stared at the note, her fingers tightening around it. Most people would have been scared, but may she smile not because she found it amusing, but because she had handled men like Henry before. She knew exactly how this would end. Chapter 3. The confrontation. One evening, as Maya sat in her apartment reading legal documents, there was a loud banging at her door. She opened it to find Henry standing there, his face red with anger. "You're late on rent," he snapped. Maya raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm not. I paid 2 days ago. I have the receipt." Henry's jaw tightened. He wasn't expecting her to be prepared well. "There's been complaints about you," he continued. "Noisy neighbors. People saying you bring in unwanted guests." Maya didn't flinch. "Really? That's funny, because I work 12-hour days. I'm barely home." "Who exactly complained?" Henry faltered for just a second. Maya took a slow step forward, narrowing the space between them. "Let's cut the act, Mr. Whitaker. You don't want me here. You never did. But I have news for you. I'm not going anywhere," Henry scoffed. "You think you can talk to me like that?" "I own this place." Maya smirked. "Not for long." Henry blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" Maya leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You should have done your research before trying to harass me." "Mr. Whitaker, then." She pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to him. Henry took it reluctantly, his eyes scanning the text and then his face. Went pale. Chapter 4. Who she really was. The card read, Dr. Maya Henderson, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice. Henry's breath caught in his throat. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's right," she said, her voice calm but deadly. "I don't just know the law, I enforce it. And you, Mr. Whitaker, are in direct violation of federal housing discrimination." Lochenry took a step back. "And now, hold on a minute." "Isavit," Maya interrupted, her tone sharp. "I've been documenting everything. Every neglected repair. Every overcharged bill. Every racist note slipped under my door. And do you know what that means?" Henry swallowed hard. "It means," Maya continued, "I have enough evidence to file a federal lawsuit against you. Discrimination. Tenant harassment. Fraud." "Oh, And let's not forget the Fair Housing Act violations, big fines for those Henry's hands. Trembled, listen. I know. You listen, Maya cut in. By this time next week, my office will be launching a full investigation into your rental practices. And if I find that you've done this to other black tenants, which I will, you won't just be paying fines. You'll be losing this building. And maybe even facing prison time. Henry took 2 steps back. His face covered in sweat, he was trapped. And for the first time in his life, he knew at Chapter 5, the fall of Henry Whitaker. By the end of the month, the case against Henry was officially open. Investigators found dozens of complaints from other black tenants over the years: overcharging, illegal evictions, intimidation tactics. The U.S. Attorney's Office took over. Henry was charged with housing discrimination, financial fraud, and tenant harassment. His bank accounts were frozen. His property was seized. And within 6 months, Henry Whitaker, once a powerful landlord, was homeless and bankrupt. Maya. She didn't just stop with Henry. She made sure that every tenant who had been wronged received compensation. And as for Unit 3B, she stayed. Because this was her home. And no racist landlord was ever going to change that.